I mean, I
Trevor, you want to hit that one up first?
sure, sure. So, I mean, I have been influenced in my own thinking. Like, it started before I think either Christina or I got professor jobs, whether tenure track or non-tenure track. And I've been influenced in the writing of scholars of what they call academic capitalism, who suggest that in response to economic crises, but also tax revolts of the 1970s, that certain kinds of administration were incentivized, and some administrators stepped to the fore to say, we're going to raise more money from donors. We're going to have more public-private partnerships. We're going to be flexible and entrepreneurial because the old model doesn't work anymore. And we've had so many decades of that what it effectively eclipsed was um, presidents who used to be like philosophy professors or literature professors whose primary interest was in facilitating character development in a conservative sense or intellectual development in a more liberal sense, and replaced them with people who are fundraisers and corporate partnership dealers and other things. And that already produced a gap. And then second, you see a change among the faculty where huge amounts of money flowing mainly through kind of biotech have produced a lot of uneven development on campuses, where you have some faculty who are teaching in 50-year-old buildings, in kind of cramped circumstances, and you have others who are in brand new buildings and they're running a very large lab with multi-million dollar grants, and the experience of those two faculty is not necessarily the same, and the degree to which their issues are taken seriously is not the same. And so we've seen this shift towards grant capture, facilitating the work that donors want done. But that's left us very vulnerable to these Trump attacks, and it's as Christina, I think, has pointed out, has really hollowed out some of the ethical and political considerations that shaped the whole reason we have public schools in the first place.
Yeah, and I'll add to that there's been a shift in the logic of the university's finances. Last year, the CFA did a long report looking at debt financing and the role of debt in the CSU's financing. And so we see increasingly, and this occurs, throughout the country, universities turning more into realtors, right? Buying up land. At Fullerton, we got a grant. The campus, I wasn't involved. The campus got a grant to build some dorms with the agreement that they would keep them below market rate. They did not. So we're raising tuition, we're raising rent on students while we're getting these below market rate loans from the state of California. That's affecting the ecosystem, but that logic is rewarded time and again once you're on that administrative track. And you can kind of follow folks through their careers and watch them bounce, right, between universities because they don't have to stick around for the fallout, right? If you cut a program as dean, but then you leave, you
That,
don't really need to deal with what happened to that.
yeah, and I would say our system is very uniquely this system that Christina and I are describing is uniquely ill-equipped to deal with the threats of Trumpism, because it's a system that was always engaged in risk management rather than standing up for some kind of big principle. And so when you have some bully come in and say, I'm going to take you over unless you do what I want, they're usually they're like, well, how can I get out of this lawsuit? But the other piece is that reliance on debt can shape actually even concepts of resistance itself. So that there have been discussions in California of like, well, we're not the Ivy Leagues, so we don't have the kind of resources to potentially backfill cuts from the federal level if the NIH and NSF funding goes away. Like we're seeing these threats now, but it may just be a precursor to something bigger. But how would we pay for that at the state level? There are people floating ideas of taking the institutions into greater debt. And I think that feels more natural because of the history Christina described of like how, well, we can't afford a new building, but let's just float a bond with the assumption that like if we're bad at real estate, our student tuition can just be raised in the end. So our bond rating keeps being maintained. This was an idea that was sort of developed by Bill Meister in kind of 2008, 2009 at UC Santa Cruz, but has really shaped the last sort of 15 years of research on these issues that CFA is now participating in.